I met Emma at a friend's birthday party, and I swear it was like something out of a sitcom. I was 26, working IT support at a mid-sized company, still going through that phase where most of your weekends are either weddings or someone trying to get everyone back together for a game night that falls apart by 9 p.m. She was 23, just a couple of years out of college, teaching third grade at an elementary school a few neighborhoods over. The party wasn't big, just maybe 15 people at a mutual friend's apartment, and Emma showed up a little late, wearing this mustard yellow sweater that she immediately apologized for, saying it was a regrettable teacher decision. She had a laugh that didn't match her voice. Her voice was soft, her laugh was not. That contrast got my attention. We ended up sitting on the floor in the hallway eating chips from a bowl someone had left on top of a laundry basket. That's where our first real conversation happened. She told me about a kid in her class who had tried to tape his pencil to his forehead during a math test because he needed to think better. I told her about a guy at work who submitted a ticket because he spilled coffee on his laptop and it stopped doing computer things. It felt easy. That's the best way I can describe it. There wasn't any trying to impress each other. She made fun of the way I held my drink. I teased her for being the kind of person who actually carries band-aids in her purse. We exchanged numbers that night, and I texted her before I even made it home. She replied with a single emoji, some weird smiley with jazz hands. I still don't know what it meant. But it worked. Our first date was a week later, coffee and a walk through the park that turned into dinner and a movie. Neither of us wanted to call it. I remember she kept her jacket on for the first hour, like she wasn't sure she wanted to get comfortable just yet. By the end of the night, she had her feet tucked up under her on the booth seat like we'd known each other for years. We didn't move fast, not really. It was the kind of slow build where you find out who someone is by watching how they talk to strangers, or how they organize their fridge, or how they argue when they're tired. She was sharp, sometimes sarcastic, but not in a mean way. She had a way of making you feel like whatever you were saying mattered. Even if it didn't. We dated for a year and a half before moving in together. I had a one-bedroom at the time, barely enough space for one person, let alone two. But we made it work. She brought plants and color into the place. I cleared out a drawer for her and then watched as that somehow turned into 3/4 of the closet. She turned my bachelor pad into a home, basically. At that point, it felt like we were really settling in. Weekends turned into routines, farmers market runs, lesson plan Sundays, Friday night takeout. We'd binge whatever show we were obsessed with at the time and fall asleep on the couch more nights than not. It was simple, but it was ours. And it worked. We weren't talking about marriage yet, not directly. But it was there. In the way she'd look at real estate listings out loud even though we had no budget. Or the way my mom would leave little hints like, "Emma, have you ever thought about a fall wedding? October's always nice." It didn't feel rushed or forced. We were just building something. Together. A few months after we moved in together, Emma started keeping a little notebook in the kitchen. It was a list of things we wanted in a future home. Stuff like a front porch, a gas stove, maybe a room we could turn into an office or nursery, someday. I didn't even notice it at first. She had just written, "Our future house," on the cover and left it near the toaster. It became this low-pressure way of dreaming together, and before we knew it, we were filling it out while cooking dinner or drinking wine on a Saturday night. That's kind of how the whole engagement happened too. It wasn't a big spectacle or anything viral-worthy. One weekend we were visiting her parents in Vermont, and while walking along this trail by the lake, we stopped at a bench and started talking about our future again, like we always did. And then she looked at me and said, "You know I'd say yes, right?" Just like that. I didn't have a ring on me or anything. But I knew she meant it. So I told her, "Good. Because I've already been planning to ask." A month later, I proposed with a small diamond set in a twisted band, nothing fancy, just simple and clean, like her. We went out for tacos that night instead of champagne. That's just who we were. It wasn't about the show, it was about us. We got married the following spring in a park close to where we'd had our first real date. The ceremony was intimate, around 60 people, mostly family and close friends. Emma wore this off-white dress that looked like it had been made just for her, hair half up, nothing overdone. She walked down the aisle with her mom, barefoot, because her heels were apparently too serious for a wedding. Everyone laughed. That's Emma. Our honeymoon was a road trip up the coast. We stayed in weird little Airbnbs, ate way too much seafood, and probably spent half the trip listening to the same playlist on repeat. No resorts, no itinerary. Just us, a rental car, and whatever town we felt like stopping in next. Back home, life kicked into gear. I got promoted to a lead role in IT infrastructure, which meant better hours and more time working from home. Emma had already been with her school for a few years by then, and she was loved by her students and coworkers. She had this ability to talk to kids like they were real people, not just tiny humans. I can't tell you how many times we'd be out shopping and some kid would come running up to her yelling, "Miss Emma," with parents trailing behind, smiling. We bought our first home about a year after the wedding. A 3-bedroom just outside the city, old enough to have character but updated enough that we weren't drowning in repairs. Emma painted the walls herself, light greens, soft grays, a yellow kitchen she swore felt like sunshine. I built the crib for our first child in what would become the nursery. Our son, Eli, was born 2 years into our marriage. I still remember holding him for the first time. He looked like her, same nose, same serious little brow. Emma was made to be a mom. She was patient in a way I didn't know was possible. Even during those sleepless nights, when we were both wrecked, she never lost that calm. She'd hum this old lullaby her grandmother used to sing, and somehow Eli would quiet down every time. A few years later, our daughter, Nora, came along, loud from day one, full of attitude and energy. Total opposite of her brother, but just as loved. Emma took some time off after Nora was born, and even though money was tighter for a while, we made it work. Those were probably the most chaotic and joyful years of our life. Toys everywhere, dishes never quite done, schedules constantly shifting, but the kind of mess that feels like a full life. We had our rhythms. Emma would pack the lunches while I did the school drop-offs. She'd stay up grading papers while I read bedtime stories. Weekends were for grocery runs, soccer games, birthday parties. I didn't know how tired I could be until we had 2 kids and full-time jobs, but there was something satisfying about it. Like we were exactly where we were meant to be. If there's one thing I learned after becoming a dad, it's that balance is a moving target. Some weeks feel like a well-oiled machine, and others feel like a slow-motion fall down a hill, trying to hold on to your coffee the whole way down. But somehow, Emma and I made it work. By the time Eli was in 1st grade and Nora had started preschool, we had a pretty solid routine. I'd wake up first, make coffee, and get lunches together if Emma hadn't already done it the night before. She was usually up not long after, getting the kids dressed, brushing Nora's hair while trying to stop Eli from turning his shirt into a cape. Mornings were loud and slightly chaotic, but they always ended the same way, Emma giving each of the kids a forehead kiss at the door, shouting reminders as they ran to the car. She had this sing-song voice she used for them, and it never failed to make them smile, even on mornings when everyone was dragging their feet. Emma loved her job. That's one thing I never questioned. Teaching wasn't just a career to her, it was who she was. She didn't just care about curriculum or test scores. She remembered birthdays, brought in extra snacks for kids who never had enough, stayed late to help students with things that weren't even part of her job description. She'd tell me about kids who were struggling at home, or the ones who surprised her with kindness when she least expected it. Her school had this really involved PTA, and she'd occasionally attend evening meetings or volunteer at weekend events. I honestly admired how much of herself she gave to her work. She wasn't doing it for praise or attention. She just really wanted to help. Meanwhile, my job had settled into something manageable. I was working remote 3 days a week, which made it easier to cover pickups and be there for sick days and school projects. The rest of the time, I commuted into the office, nothing fancy, just your typical tech firm. I liked it well enough. It paid the bills, gave us stability, let us build the life we wanted. I wasn't passionate about servers or firewalls, but I felt like I was contributing. Our marriage was a partnership. That's how we both saw it. Not always 50-50, but fair in the long run. Sometimes I'd do more. Sometimes she would. There were moments of friction, whose turn it was to get groceries, who forgot to send the permission slip, but nothing that lingered. We always circled back. Nights were quiet, which I liked. After the kids were down, we'd usually collapse onto the couch together. She'd grade papers or scroll through Pinterest, while I caught up on emails or got sucked into some podcast. We weren't overly romantic all the time, but there was a steady closeness. She'd rest her feet on my lap. I'd steal bites of whatever dessert she was pretending she didn't want. It felt comfortable in the best way. We took trips when we could. Not big vacations, just long weekends to places the kids would enjoy. One time we rented a cabin near the lake, and Emma brought an entire bin of crafts, just in case the kids got bored. They didn't, but she ended up doing the crafts herself anyway. She was like that, always prepared, always moving. I used to joke that her idea of relaxing was reorganizing the pantry. The house stayed in a mostly functional state. Laundry was a shared battle. She handled most of the kids' appointments and school communications. I did the yard work and anything that involved fixing, mounting, or assembling. It wasn't perfect, but it worked for us. Emma still laughed at my dumb impressions. I'd bring her coffee in bed on Saturday mornings when I could, and she'd roll her eyes every time I messed up the ratio of cream to sugar, even though I knew exactly how she liked it. That was our routine, teasing each other over the little stuff, never taking it too seriously. We still made time for date nights. Sometimes we'd get a sitter and go out for sushi or try a new place downtown. Other times it was just putting the kids to bed early, ordering Thai, and watching a movie in our pajamas. We didn't need anything fancy, just a little space to breathe and be a couple again. On weekends, we'd tackle errands together like a team. Grocery runs, school projects, cleaning out the garage, none of it glamorous, but it felt good to share the load. Sunday afternoons were our favorite, the kids playing in the yard, music playing in the background, the smell of something baking in the kitchen. It was busy, sure, but it felt full in the best way. The school year had just started up again, which always brought a certain kind of chaos into our house. Emma was back in full-on teacher mode, juggling lesson plans, bulletin boards, and what felt like a never-ending stream of parent emails. She'd come home exhausted most days, kick off her shoes in the hallway, and plop down on the couch with her laptop still open. I'd handle dinner and the kids, and she'd pick up again once they were asleep. It was busy, but we'd done this dance before. It was just our rhythm during the school year. One thing that changed, though, she started going in earlier. Not just beating traffic early, but out the door before the kids had even woken up. At first, I didn't think much of it. She said she wanted to get a head start on prepping her classroom, especially with the new literacy program they were rolling out. Totally believable. Emma had always been the type to over-prepare, especially at the beginning of the year. But after the second week of it, I started noticing smaller things. Like how she'd rush out with barely a sip of her coffee, Emma never skipped her coffee. Or how she stopped asking me to pack her lunch, saying she didn't have an appetite during the day. That one stuck with me, because she used to love having leftovers or one of those overcomplicated salads she'd build with whatever was in the fridge. She said it was just the stress. I believed her. One night while we were watching TV, her phone buzzed and she quickly flipped it over on the couch cushion. Not dramatic, just fast. I only noticed because I was in the middle of telling her something and she didn't look up. I paused, waiting, but she just nodded like she was listening. I let it go. It wasn't like her to be secretive, but it also wasn't worth picking a fight over one moment. The following Saturday, she had a curriculum planning session with a few other teachers at the school. I'd heard her mention it earlier in the week, so it wasn't a surprise, and I offered to take the kids out for a while so she could work in peace. She smiled, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and said thanks. I didn't think anything of it, at least, not until later that day when I tried texting her to see if she wanted me to bring her back coffee. She didn't reply. I figured she was knee-deep in work and let it slide. She didn't respond until nearly 4 hours later with just, "Oh sorry. Busy day. Just heading home now." Again, nothing really wrong. It just felt impersonal, maybe. That's when the feelings started to settle in. That thing you don't even want to name. Like something's off, but you don't know where or why or how, so you brush it aside because maybe you're overthinking. But I started paying closer attention. Not obsessively, just noting little changes. She wasn't cold or mean. She still hugged me when she got home, still asked how the kids were. But there was a slight distance. Like she was somewhere else in her head. Like she had just enough left in her at the end of the day to show up, but only halfway. It didn't feel like a problem yet. Just a phase, I told myself. The school year always hit hard at the beginning, and Emma tended to throw herself into it more than most. I figured it would pass. Things would settle down. They always did. But still, I was watching. Things didn't fall apart all at once. If anything, they kept moving along in this sort of halfway normal way that made it harder to point to anything specific. The mornings were still hectic, the kids were still loud, and the laundry never stopped piling up. It's just that Emma seemed harder to reach lately. She wasn't angry. She wasn't withdrawn in the obvious sense. She was just elsewhere. The early mornings kept going. Sometimes she'd already be gone by the time I came downstairs, even before the sun was fully up. I'd find a note on the counter, left early for school. Don't forget Eli's library books. Love you. That sort of thing. Nothing dramatic. But it started to feel like she was actively trying to avoid crossing paths in the mornings. I asked her once if everything was okay, and she smiled, told me she was just swamped, but that things would ease up after the upcoming parent-teacher conferences. Around that same time, she started dressing a little differently. Not a major overhaul, just a shift, more form-fitting tops, a bit more makeup. New perfume. I noticed, but I didn't comment right away. I mean, she looked good, no question. And I'm not the guy who thinks his wife can't evolve or change things up. It just didn't feel like it was for me, if that makes sense. There wasn't that shared moment where she'd ask, "What do you think of this?" or the usual, "Smell this, too strong," that she used to do before we left the house together. It was more like she was getting ready for a version of the day that I wasn't part of. One afternoon, I stopped by her school. I had picked up some art supplies for Eli's class project and figured I'd drop them off since I was nearby. Normally, I'd text ahead or give her a heads up, but this time I didn't. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. The front office lady recognized me, smiled, and buzzed me in. Emma's classroom door was closed. Through the narrow window, I saw her at her desk, typing something on her laptop. But what caught my attention was that she was talking to someone, some man I didn't recognize. He was standing just a bit too close, leaning against her desk with a coffee in hand. They weren't touching, nothing like that. But their body language was comfortable. I didn't go in. I stood there for maybe 5-6 seconds, and then turned around, told the office staff I'd leave the supplies in the hallway. It wasn't a big deal. I told myself that. Probably a coworker. A parent, maybe. I didn't ask her about it that night. I think part of me didn't want to sound jealous over something so minor. I didn't want to be that guy. But after that, I started noticing a few more names popping up in conversation that I hadn't heard before. Especially one, Mark. Mark helped me reconfigure the reading corner. Mark thinks I should apply for the curriculum lead position next year. Mark said the kids love when we do music breaks. She talked about him casually, but more than once. Enough that I remembered the name. I googled the staff directory out of curiosity. No one named Mark worked at the school. That was the first time I felt something twist a little in my chest. Not panic. Not even anger. Just the realization that I didn't know everything going on in her world. And maybe that wasn't new. Maybe I'd just stopped paying attention for a while. A couple nights later, I noticed she had started keeping her phone on silent. Not just in the evenings, all the time. It wasn't buzzing, dinging, nothing. And when she got messages, she'd check them fast, glance down and swipe away. I asked her jokingly, "Everything okay with your phone? Did you finally mute that endless teacher group chat?" She laughed and said she was trying to be more present. Less screen time, she said. I wanted to believe that. And part of me still did. But that's when I started watching even more carefully, not because I didn't trust her, but because something didn't feel aligned. Things settled into this weird in-between space. Emma wasn't acting cold, she wasn't picking fights, and she didn't seem unhappy. She was still doing everything she usually did, managing the kids' schedules, staying on top of school stuff, running the house like she always had. But I kept catching myself watching her in a way I never used to. Not admiring. Not even suspicious. Just, observing. Trying to figure out if I was imagining this shift or if it was actually happening. We went to a birthday party for one of Nora's friends from preschool, one of those backyard setups with bouncy castles and stressed-out parents drinking LaCroix out of plastic cups. Emma was chatty, doing her usual thing where she made everyone feel comfortable and remembered all the other moms' names. I watched her from across the lawn, holding a juice box for Nora while she ran in circles, and for a second I almost convinced myself I'd been overthinking everything. On the way home, though, she barely spoke. She scrolled her phone the whole ride and then said she had some lesson planning to finish. I offered to take care of dinner, and she just nodded without looking up. It wasn't rude. It was just, flat. That same night, I saw her smiling at something on her phone while brushing her teeth. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. It was a small thing, the kind of moment you'd usually forget an hour later, but for some reason it stuck. A few days after that, I offered to swing by her school during lunch and bring her food, something I hadn't done in a while. She hesitated. Said they had a staff meeting during lunch that day and she wouldn't have time to eat anyway. I said no problem and left it at that. Later that evening, I saw the takeout container I'd packed for her in the fridge, untouched. Normally, she would have eaten it when she got home, but she didn't mention it. Just went straight to her laptop. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she really didn't have time. Maybe she'd just forgotten it was there. A few nights later, while she was in the shower, I passed by her phone on the bed. It lit up with a message, just a first name, nothing else. I didn't recognize it. I didn't touch the phone. Didn't even lean in to read the message. But I noticed how fast she picked it up when she came out. She didn't say anything about it, and I didn't ask. I told myself I didn't need to know. Or maybe I just wasn't sure how to ask without sounding ridiculous. I hadn't told anyone about how I was feeling. Not my brother, not my friends, not even the one guy at work I sometimes confide in when things get messy at home. There wasn't anything to report, really. No fight, no event, no proof. Just a string of things that didn't quite land the way they used to. I started keeping mental notes, when she came home, how long she stayed at school, how quickly she'd answer a text. It wasn't about catching her doing something wrong. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I just wanted something that would make me feel like everything was normal again. But it was starting to feel like she had more going on than she was letting on. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't know how to ask my own wife what was on her mind. The parent-teacher conferences finally came around, the ones Emma had mentioned when I first asked if everything was okay. She was swamped that whole week, barely home before the kids were in bed, and even then she had her laptop open at the kitchen table until late. She told me it was normal, that this time of year always hit hard. I didn't argue. I handled the kids' baths, packed the next day's lunches, and kept the house from falling apart. That wasn't new. We always helped each other during the busy stretches. What was different was how she moved through the days, like she was running on a loop that didn't include me. She wasn't distant in a way that would spark an argument. It was quieter than that. No tension. Just space. Like we were both playing roles in the same routine, just no longer at the same pace. That Friday, Emma mentioned there was going to be a staff dinner after the last round of conferences. Casual, off-campus, just a few teachers and some parents who volunteered a lot. She said it almost in passing while she was brushing her hair. I remember nodding, asking where it was. She said a restaurant near the school, nothing fancy. I asked who'd be there. She listed off a few names I didn't recognize and said she might be home late. I told her to have a good time. She left wearing something I hadn't seen before. A dark green blouse, slightly dressier than what she'd usually wear out with coworkers. She looked good, really good, but didn't ask me what I thought. She usually did. I didn't say anything. I just helped Eli zip up his pajamas and made sure Nora brushed her teeth. She didn't text much that night. Just once, around 9:30, still here. Might be another hour or so. I put the kids to bed, cleaned up, watched some half-hearted TV. I wasn't waiting up for her, but I didn't go to sleep either. She came in just after 11. Not drunk, but relaxed in a way I hadn't seen from her in weeks. Said it had been fun, a nice break, and went straight to take off her makeup. She got ready for bed in silence, and I was too tired to start any conversation that late. Saturday morning, she was up early again. Said she had to swing by the school to grab some materials for the next week's lesson plans. She didn't take the kids, which was unusual for a weekend errand. Normally, she'd bring at least one of them along just to give me a breather. But she left solo and said she'd only be gone an hour or two. By lunchtime, she still wasn't back. I texted her, nothing for a while. Then finally, sorry. Got caught up organizing some stuff. Be back soon. She came home carrying a tote bag with a few binders and didn't really explain what had taken so long. Said something about running into another teacher who needed help setting up a display. I didn't press it. I wasn't tracking her movements. I wasn't reading through her phone. I wasn't digging. But I did notice more often when her answers were vague or when her timing didn't quite line up with what she said. Not because I was paranoid. Just because I couldn't stop myself from noticing anymore. We went out with the kids that Sunday, pumpkin patch, hot cider, the whole autumn weekend thing. She was warm, engaged, joking with the kids, stealing fries off my plate like she always did. If anyone saw us, they'd say we were fine. Better than fine. But something about the way she'd glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking stuck with me. I didn't know what to make of it. And I still hadn't said a word. That week felt like every other one lately, Emma out early, back late, the house moving on a loop I'd gotten used to. I was in auto mode with the kids, juggling work and home and bedtime stories. She was still ticking all the boxes, helpful, attentive in flashes, present enough. We weren't fighting. We weren't even talking much. Just orbiting each other in a way that felt like routine more than connection. On Thursday, she reminded me in the morning that she had a meeting after school. Something about an extended PTA session or curriculum planning with a few parents and faculty. She said it would probably run late and asked if I could handle dinner and the bedtime routine solo. I said of course. I didn't even think twice. That had become our new normal. Around 6:30, after the kids had eaten and I got Nora into her pajamas, I texted Emma to ask if she wanted me to save her a plate. No reply. An hour later, I sent another message. Just a simple, everything okay? She responded 20 minutes later. Sorry. Meeting's wrapping up. I'll be out soon. I figured I'd go pick her up. We only had one car at the moment, mine, so she'd gotten a ride to work that morning with a coworker. She hadn't asked me to come get her, but I thought it'd be a nice gesture. Maybe grab coffee for the two of us on the way home, give us a few minutes alone. We hadn't had those kinds of small moments in a while. The school looked mostly quiet when I pulled into the lot. A few scattered cars still in the parking area. Lights still on in some classrooms. I parked near the front entrance and sent her a message, out front. No answer. I waited. Watched the front door. It was about 8:15. Then I saw her. Not coming out the front doors, but from the side lot, near the staff entrance. She was walking beside someone, a man. Tall, maybe mid-40s. He had a slight lean as he walked, hands in his coat pockets, like they were mid-conversation. They weren't rushing. They weren't trying to be discreet. I recognized her coat before I recognized her face. The way she laughed, tucked her hair behind her ear. I've seen that exact movement 100 times. Then it happened. She stopped, turned toward him. He stepped in closer. And then she kissed him. Not quick, not casual. She leaned into him, hand gently resting on his chest like it was second nature. His arm moved around her waist, pulling her in. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a goodbye. It was the kind of kiss you give someone you've been missing all day. I didn't move. I didn't even feel my hands gripping the steering wheel until I noticed how tight my knuckles had gone. They didn't see me. They walked together toward another car, parked a few rows away from mine. She got in on the passenger side. He circled to the driver's seat. They sat there for a few minutes. I didn't stay long enough to see what happened next. I backed out of the lot and drove home. The house was quiet when I came in. The kids were asleep. Dishes still in the sink. Her untouched dinner still on the stove. I didn't call her. Didn't text. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Just sat there, completely still, as the pieces started falling into place. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I laid in bed, fully dressed, lights off, just listening to the walls. I didn't even feel angry at first. Just empty. Like someone had pulled the plug on everything inside me. My body was still, but my mind was wide awake, looping that moment in the parking lot over and over again. Emma came in sometime around midnight. Quiet. I heard her slip off her shoes, set her bag down by the door, move softly down the hallway. She didn't come into the bedroom. She went straight to the bathroom, then the spare room. Maybe she thought I was asleep. Maybe she didn't care. In the morning, I didn't say anything. I got the kids ready for school like usual. Made their lunches, packed Nora's reading folder, helped Eli find his missing sneaker. Emma moved through the house like normal, too. Not a single word about where she'd been. Not a trace of guilt in her face. Just the usual, make sure they're on time, and Nora has library today, on her way out the door. When they were gone, I sat in the kitchen. And that's when it hit me. Not sadness. Not shock. Just this sharp, clean clarity. I called a locksmith. He came that afternoon. Changed the locks. I didn't tell him the reason. Just watched him work, paid him in cash, and thanked him when he left. After that, I packed a suitcase, not mine, hers. Just the essentials. Clothes, charger, toiletries. I left it by the door. When Emma came home, the kids were still at my parents' house. I'd told them I needed a night to breathe. That's all. No details. She walked in, set her keys down, and stared at the suitcase. What is this? You're not sleeping here tonight, I said. You're not staying here anymore. She blinked like she didn't understand. What are you talking about? I saw you. I saw you with him. Silence. I picked you up, I said. Or tried to. I saw everything. Her whole face dropped. She didn't deny it. Not once. She just stood there, completely still, like if she didn't move, none of this would be happening. You kissed him, I said. Right outside the school. It wasn't, she started, but stopped. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. That's what she said. That. I don't care how I found out. I care that it happened. That it's probably been happening for a while. I didn't want to hurt you. I just looked at her. You did. She asked if we could talk. I told her no. She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her to figure it out. I handed her the suitcase and opened the door. And she left. No screaming. No begging. Just one last look, and then the door shut behind her. I filed for divorce the next day. Once Emma was gone from the house, I shifted into another gear. I was heartbroken, yeah, but underneath that was something colder. Something focused. I'd been humiliated, torn apart in silence by two people who played it calm while gutting the life I'd built. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to bury them quietly. It started with a phone call to a friend I'd helped years ago. Nothing shady, just someone with reach. He worked in government contracting now but used to sit in some very polished legal circles. I asked him if he could look into a man named David Matthews. PTA parent. Lawyer. Regular at my wife's school. He didn't even ask why, just said, give me a couple days. What came back was everything I needed. David worked at a mid-size private firm. Big on community image, family values, long-standing reputation. His face was on the company's holiday card, smiling next to his wife and two kids. He sat on 3 committees. He played golf with a partner who happened to know my contact. That was the key. I didn't go loud. I didn't need to. The photo I'd taken, the one of him kissing my wife in the school parking lot, was more than enough. I printed it. Mailed it. Addressed it to his firm's managing partner. No return name. Just the photo, tucked in a manila envelope. Then I sent the same to his wife. She filed for divorce within the week. Took the kids, moved in with her sister, and retained one of the best family lawyers in the city. David was blindsided. According to what I heard through the grapevine, his wife had suspected something, but seeing it that clearly, out in public, at a school, flipped the switch. He lost his footing at home, and when word spread around his firm, he lost it at work too. He was let go quietly, as these things go. Reputation clause, personal conduct violation, internal breach of policy. His name was scrubbed from their website within 3 days. Emma didn't say anything to me about it. But I could tell when it reached her. The tone of her messages changed. Shorter. More clipped. She stopped asking about the kids. Just logistics. Just facts. I had already filed for divorce. Full custody request. She didn't contest it. Her time with David had been short-lived. And once his life caved in, so did hers. She didn't have a place to land anymore. She moved in with a coworker, someone from school. I didn't care. I stopped tracking her after that. I kept my focus on the kids, getting them to school on time, helping with projects, taking them to their appointments. Keeping everything stable. In the custody hearing, it was quick. Emma didn't push back. I think part of her knew she'd already lost her footing with them. The kids had been with me through the entire mess, and I'd made sure their lives stayed as normal as possible. Eli had even asked, out of nowhere one night, "Is Mom living somewhere else because she was bad?" I told him no, that she was figuring some things out. But deep down, I think he already understood more than he let on. The court awarded me full custody. She was granted visitation, supervised initially. Holidays on rotation. Weekends when it worked with the schedule. I didn't fight it. I wasn't looking to punish her, I just didn't want her disrupting their lives any more than she already had. So that was it. David lost his family and his job. Emma lost her affair, her marriage, and her home. And me? I got the kids. The house. The silence. And a fridge that no longer had to hold her favorite oat milk. There was no celebration. No satisfaction. Just a kind of stillness that settled in and stayed. It's been a few months now. The dust has settled, at least on the outside. The kids are with me full time. I get them up for school, pack lunches, make sure Nora wears matching socks, though half the time she swaps them out anyway. Eli started helping around the house more without me asking. He even tried to fix the kitchen drawer that always sticks, using tape and a spoon. I didn't touch it after that. Still works, somehow. Emma visits once or twice a month. Just for a few hours. She's polite. That's the best way I can describe it. No warmth. No apology. Just a woman going through the motions, trying not to cry in front of her children. I don't make it easier for her. I don't make it harder either. We just exist in the same space when we have to. I don't ask about David. I don't care where he is or how bad he fell. The damage is done. I did what I set out to do, removed him from the equation. But it didn't bring me any peace. That whole part of it, the revenge, the strategy, the clean execution, it felt powerful in the moment. Now it just feels quiet. Like moving a heavy object and then realizing it didn't really change the view. Some friends drifted. A couple stayed. My parents come by more often now, and they help with the kids when they can. I don't talk about Emma with anyone. There's not much left to say. Everyone knows what happened. And the ones who don't. I'm not in the mood to fill them in. At night, the house feels big. Not in the comforting way. Just empty. I've got my routines. Wake early, coffee, check Eli's bag for homework, remind Nora to brush her teeth. Fold laundry. Prep dinner. Read. Sleep. Repeat. It's a simple life. Not the one I thought I'd be living. But it's steady. I don't think about love right now. I don't think about dating. That part of me is locked up tight, and I don't even feel the need to check on it. What I have is 2 kids who still laugh when I make stupid voices, and still reach for my hand when we cross the street. That's enough. Sometimes, I catch a glimpse of her in old photos. Emma, the version before everything. And yeah, something tightens in my chest for a second. But I turn the page. I don't linger. I used to wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to pick her up that night. If I hadn't seen the kiss. If I'd stayed home, cooked dinner, watched TV, and gone to bed thinking everything was fine. That thought used to drive me mad. Now, I'm just glad I saw it. Not because it made me stronger. Not because I won anything. But because sometimes, the truth doesn't knock. It just shows up in plain sight and dares you to keep pretending. And I didn't. I saw it. I faced it. And I'm still standing.